Okay, so good morning, everybody. Welcome to our panel. I'm going to start off by introducing our awesome panel. And actually, I'm going to start off with you, JT, because I know you've just got back from Brazil. So a bit jet lagged, but JT, some of you may know JT, leads a Filipino platform that connects small farmers and coastal producers with retailers and food service companies. He's working on raising farmer incomes, strengthening supply routes, particularly local supply routes, and using some really simple digital tools to bring producers closer to buyers. So thank you for making it. I'm going to introduce next Laurent. So welcome to Singapore. Welcome back to home to Singapore, as you've told me. Laurent leads Sodexo's Malaysia and Singapore operations, guiding one of the world's major food service organizations, serving thousands of meals throughout a tightly controlled and complex supply chain. And then to Richard. So Richard, welcome to the panel. Richard is the research director in precision aquaculture at Temasek Life Sciences Laboratory. Heads the precision work linking researchers, farmers, and startups to improve tropical aquaculture. Moved here during COVID. That takes a lot of guts to do that. From Normandy, that must have been a big change. But you're working on strengthening Singapore's position in sustainable aquaculture and agricultural research. So let's get started. We've got 30 minutes. The time's quite tight. We've got 3 topics to talk about. So 2 or 3 minutes for each topic. Exploring how leveraging Europe's R&D ecosystem, building resilient partnerships can help ASEAN create sustainable, traceable, future-ready food systems. So that's the menu for today. So let's get cracking, and I'm going to start off with food sovereignty and resilience. How are ASEAN countries strengthening their capacity to feed their population in a context which is really about dependency, climate vulnerability? And I'm going to start off with Richard. So Richard, let me begin with you. How is this strengthening capacity of the region? How is it strengthening autonomy in the region, particularly in Singapore, which is where your experience is?
Yes, thank you for the introduction. Indeed, I'm more focused on Singapore ability, because as you probably know, this is a main concern for Singapore to be able to provide more food security in the future. It's a bit challenging for this country because, as you know, there is a very limited area for agriculture here. But there have been a lot of work over the past years to make Singapore able to produce locally first, but also to diversify a lot their source of supply in the region. Yeah. Last week, there's been a new announcement by the Singapore Food Agency about this, explaining that the 30 by 30 will be modified to adjust to 35 now, with 30% of local egg and seafood production by 2035. Sorry, and so this is a new ambition, a new challenge that has been quite successful for egg, I would say, over the past years. A bit more challenging for seafood. But there are a lot of initiatives to grow this capability, and a lot of also bilateral partnership with local countries to help sourcing more resilient and more stable supply of food.
Yeah. So that leads in nicely for JT, working with local sectors, regional partnerships, helping small producers in these strategies. How do you help them to get better access to those markets?
Well, in our context, Don, for instance, in the Philippines, we have over 10 million smallholder farmers. And if you try to take a look at their supply chains, not only is our supply chain very inefficient in terms of very high post-harvest losses, we also have a supply chain that's highly intermediated. And of course, what exacerbates that would be extreme weather events. We have El Nino, drought, typhoons, etc. So what we do in Miami is we try to streamline that supply chain and provide the necessary sustainable pathways to markets for our smallholder farmers. And we do that through two things. One, the collectivization of all these smallholder farmers, because a lot of them normally just have about a hectare to 1.2 hectares of land in terms of land holding size. Very small compared to mature economies like France, for instance, or Europe. But second is that being able to equip them with tools that really provide them agency, which is for us what food sovereignty really means in the context of an agricultural nation like the Philippines. Yeah. So it's really about those two things.
Yeah, yeah. And what sort of tools do you provide them with? Can you give us an example?
So in this case, for instance, apart from providing them capacity building, what we do is we built the technology to be able to see how we can trace and profile production way ahead in terms of time, way before harvest, and being able to work really with like-minded corporates and off-take partners to be able to say, you know, what would you need? What would you need to be grown so that you can have a stable supply chain, but also be able to keep your food costs pretty stable, have a resilient one over time. Yeah. So we do a lot of those growership models.
Yeah, thanks for sharing that. So Laurent, let's turn to you and from an operator viewpoint. What can you do to secure the supply chain and support the growth of these regional producers? What do you think?
So actually, in this panel, we represent the downstream part of the supply chain. And before talking about our action, let me maybe, I don't know how familiar the people in the room are familiar with who is Sodexo, but Sodexo is a French family-owned company, and our corporate responsibility is really at the heart of everything that we are doing. And we are actually operating in 45 countries. We have 420,000 employees in the world, and we serve around 15 million meals every day in Asia only. So obviously, the local sourcing has been a key stake for us from the early days of Sodexo. And sourcing locally is not an option for us, it's actually a necessity. And we have developed along the year many local partnerships with local producers. Not only because it's good for the planet and it reduces the carbon footprint, but also because usually we source a good quality product. One of the barriers that we are usually facing in sourcing locally is for those suppliers to meet our own requirement. You know, we have some global standard that we need to match in terms of traceability, for instance, in terms of processes. So the beauty of those partnerships is usually to help and support those local suppliers to improve in some ways and also leverage the secured volume that we are able also to propose them. So we are doing it in many countries because let's not forget that when we operate in Malaysia, we serve Malaysian people, so we need Malaysia product and we cook Malaysian recipes, same in the Philippines. So while some countries like Singapore are very import dependent, we leverage as much as we can what we are doing locally. So you spoke about the eggs. We are purchasing most of our eggs locally in Singapore. We have also developed in Malaysia partnership with some women-owned business, also to support the local communities. That's for ice creams, and we are quite proud of this one because it's also part of the citizen role, I would say, that Sodexo wants to play around the world.
That's good. Okay, so let's move on. We'd like to talk about trust. How do we guarantee quality, sustainability in the supply chains, which are, from what I've heard from all of you, increasingly fragmented? I'm actually going to kick off with you, JT. Looking at your producer network, where are the weak links in that, in your small producer networks? We talked about that briefly before.
Well, Don, there are mainly two things I'd like to point out. I think the first crucial node of the supply chain would be around post-harvest distribution. Okay. And that's where we strive to create the proper cold logistics solution to be able to provide good quality at scale and the right kind of service level to our clients or offtake partners in the Philippines. But at the same time, be able to mitigate the food loss that's happening, which really translates to income erosion for our rural producers. Okay. Remember that every single kilo of fresh produce that never gets to the market would be a kilo that never gets translated to incomes for a lot of our rural producers, therefore undermining their capability to actually recover their income that's supposed to fund their next cycle of production or cropping cycle. The second thing I want to point out is around production and how climate change has really created such a debilitating scenario. I'd always like to talk about, in the context of the Philippines, what we call the great paradox. Every year, we have over $136 million in terms of annual losses in agriculture, and yet only 2.6% of the agriculture sector is covered by the financial sector in terms of lending. And so what happens in here is that this cycle of extreme weather events, we get about 25 typhoons in a year. We're in the Pacific Ring of Fire as well. We sit at the #1 spot according to ADB in terms of disaster risk, in terms of extreme weather events. And so what we're seeing here is that our smallholder farmers are the most vulnerable to climate change, and yet they're the least capable and equipped in terms of adapting to it and recovering from it. And so what we've done there is, through partners like, for instance, like HSBC, who gave us that philanthropic funding to be able to say, how do we build smallholder resilience? Because there's nothing to connect to the market. If one extreme torrential storm can wipe out an entire farm field, and that destroys the income of a rural smallholder. So those two things, upstream on the production side, downstream in terms of post-harvest distribution.
Yeah. And can you give us an example about how you build resilience? How do you do that?
One, we work with what we call collectivized farmers or aggregated smallholder farmers. In the Philippines, we call them cooperatives. So these are grassroots collectives, farmers who have come together, clustered, and have a single production profile. So let's say a group of mountain farmers who actually grow tomatoes and several other crops like highland vegetables. Okay. And so from there, we create the technical assistance and the capacity building intervention to train them on climate-smart agriculture. Okay. From as simple as, for instance, crop diversification or agroforestry, where you mix trees with crops, where the trees actually serve as natural barriers against wind speed, strong wind speed, or typhoons where we get about 25 in a year, right? And then at the same time we were able to build our cold chain logistics. Yeah. Not just for offtake partners and our buyers, but being able to really mitigate post-harvest losses in a context where it really matters the most.
Fascinating. So Richard, let's move to you. Could you maybe share an example from your domain, which is aquaculture, food science, that you think is maybe promising for sustainability?
Yes, and trust. I think what you mentioned about trust is very important because we can see that sometimes local consumers of seafood, there is a lack of trust about fish, for example, or about products, especially for antibiotics, for example. There is a local concern when you buy. So there are some interesting research going on in Singapore about these topics. One has been announced last week, actually. Singapore Food Agency decided to invest 40 million into a food security research program to improve that. And we have, for example, one on replacement of antibiotics. But there is also the trust about the nutritional quality, what you buy. For example, it's in the 90s, when you buy 100 grams of salmon, you have approximately 3,000 milligrams of EPA and DHA, which is omega-3 you want in your meal. Today, because the feed of the fish has changed, the industry has changed, it's only 1,000. So it's 1/3 just in a few years of evolution. And this is the same in the area. We have a new nutritional content of the food we buy, and sometimes decreasing. So that's very important to rebuild this trust in some of these products, because sometimes it's difficult for the consumers to trust what they buy. And another example, I think, is to make sure that the farmers can survive a bit longer. I mean, can have a better life, because you cannot really trust in the area what you you see the industry is having problems. And in Singapore, we had also this phenomenon a lot with aquaculture farmers and farmers in general suffering a lot from the market and from the context. So I think it's important also to support the farmers the best we can in research, but also through investment and through governance support, so that we can also trust them on the long term and make sure they will survive well and live well. Yeah.
So how do you build trust? For you? I mean, you've told us how you build trust, but what does it take for them to trust you?
Well, for example, the program I was mentioning that's been announced last week is called Aquapolis. It's a research program we built together with 19 local farmers. So we've integrated them as co-development in the innovation target definition. So we know from the beginning that most probably if we reach what we aim for, it will be helpful for them. So that's also how a researcher and in general agriculture research in Singapore can commit to their responsibility, do their job by integrating the farmers along the process of innovation.
Yeah, that's really interesting. So Laurent, let's hear from you. Guaranteeing quality, sustainability in a really complex supply chain. What would you say to that? How do you do that?
I would say that being again at the downstream part of the overall process, we really focus on what is customer expectations, which is a lot about reliability, transparency, and also measurable sustainability, I would say. So we are leveraging more and more the technology on that front, not to change the customer experience, because we are a people business and we really emphasize on the customer relationship and the human relationship, but we want to use the technology more to manage the complexity of, I would say, the back office. So we rely more and more on the AI technology to predict and forecast what the supply should be and reduce the waste, the food waste. As we usually say, the best way to manage food waste is to avoid the food waste. So we work a lot on the forecast. We have this Waste Watch program globally that is implemented on the 30,000 sites that we manage globally to weigh the waste at all the different stages of the production. So it could be, during the storage phase until the service time and the post-consumer waste that we wait to make the customers, because we make them aware of the food waste, but also our team, and help people becoming more aware of the amount of waste that we face. And the objective for Sodexo, thanks to this technology, is actually to reach the 50% reduction of food waste globally. Considering the size that of our operation, this is quite significant. And that's how we see the technology playing a role.
Yeah. So our last topic, we're going to shift to innovation, inclusion. And the question is, how can technological and social innovation, how can that accelerate the transformation of our food systems? Richard, I think I'm going to start from you. From your perspective, research, co-development, which you mentioned earlier on, technology, how does that genuinely help to develop performance?
Well, to my opinion, that's essential, but it's probably because I'm highly involved in that. But to give an example, our organization in Singapore is a bit unique. We are a non-profit organization doing research for agriculture, sustainability, and it's highly on biotechnology. And in Singapore, it has been a very efficient way to develop research and innovation for farmers, because it gives a long-term approach and a long-term finance to create and build research programs, which I think with farmers is very important, because sometimes we have the impression that we can innovate the same way in agri-tech on short-term basis, which unfortunately doesn't happen this way. You have to liaise with the farmer for multiple years to make sure after maybe 3 years with typhoon or 3 years with drought, you have a chance to get a fantastic production year. So it has to be on the long term, and this is not always easy to do in a university program, for example, or sometimes also with a private research program. That's interesting. We are here sitting with Bpifrance here because I remember having the same questions in France. The research programs funded by BP in France are also supporting a lot this SMEs program on the long term. And I think that's really a key we need in agritech, is this idea that over 6 months, 1 year, 2 years, even 3 years, it's not possible really to build an innovation in this sector. We have to think about 5 years, and I'm a geneticist initially. A breeding program takes 10 years, 15 years minimum. So we have to think the long-term plan.
I'm going to switch now to Laurent. We talked before the session about menu design, waste management, really, the sort of retail end of this. What's your perspective on that? How are these helping to raise standards, meet international standards? How's that happening?
So as I said earlier, in terms of waste management, we rely a lot on this technology that really help us reduce the food waste. So that's, I would say, for one side. For the menu design, actually, we have developed also across different countries this menu cycle where we develop more and more plant-based recipes or zero waste also recipes. We have this international competition of chefs presenting those innovative approach on the recipes. And again, back to the supply chain and how we have also reconsidering the way we purchase. We have those local partnership with, again, I will come back to this Agria partnership that we have in the Philippines. We are also challenging a lot the supply chain in China with the electrification of the supply chain, which is actually a massive impact. What we are doing in Singapore also is to have this Innovax event that we are organizing once a year, which gather local farmers. There are farmers in Singapore also, startups, and our clients to present innovation. So it could be technological innovation, but also innovative product that we are then serving to the corporation, schools, and hospital that we serve every day.
JT, to wrap up this conversation, I can see you nodding here. Could you maybe share with us an example of how or where innovation has really changed the outcome for one of your local small producers or buyers?
I'll share with you a quick anecdote, Don. So we work with a group of farmers in southern Philippines through a large island called Mindanao. And a lot of these farmers are actually Moro or Muslim farmers, and they're largely women. They grow pomelos. And in this case, what we've done is that technology really allows us to scale the impact that we have for farmers in smallholding context. In the context of that story, we were able to distribute literally thousands of pomelos to Dali, Philippines. Think about the equivalent of Aldi, but in the Philippines, over 1,100 stores. And so what we've seen in their part was a rise in rural incomes in terms of these smallholder farmers being able to have that direct pathway to market. But at the same time, being able to also help them market their imperfect pomelos. I think a lot of the understudied segment of fresh produce that we have in agriculture would be, what do we do with the cosmetically imperfect crops or produce that we have? And so, at least for Mayani in the Philippines, we were able to create that market for their imperfect crops and be able to translate that into concrete, measurable rise in rural incomes for our smallholder farmers.
Yeah. So some fascinating insights there. We're going to close this discussion up, and I'd like maybe each of you just to share a sentence, a phrase, something that you'd like to address the audience. What do you want them to walk away with? What's the message that matters most from your vantage point? Maybe start off with you, Laurent.
Maybe I will take this opportunity to bounce on what you just said on imperfect product, because we have this partnership in Australia with an association by the name of YUMI, where we are currently, I think it's the figures for 2024, we bought 170 tons of imperfect product in Australia. So we are really looking for a partnership like those one, because we don't care about cooking those imperfect product that does not fit the retail standard. That is usually the problem. But as a conclusion, I would say that we should see this, I would say, this uncertainty on the global situation today, and the risk more as an opportunity for us, and that's how Sodexo have been behaving from the start, having this local partnership that is, again, not an option for us. So it's good for the planet, but we are not only doing this because it's good for the planet, it's also a way for us to strengthen the autonomy and the resilience of our supply chain all over the world. And I really believe on the virtuous cycle that it creates, again, with those local suppliers that can grow thanks to the local demand and the expertise and knowledge that we have from all over the world. Again, we are a global company, but we operate locally, and we really focus on the local demand.
JT, final word for the audience.
I think we're really open and would like to enjoin everybody to consider playing a role in uplifting rural agri-food value chains, not just in the Philippines, but perhaps in the broader global south. I think platforms like this are very powerful when it comes to crystallizing and perhaps cross-pollinating partnerships. And I've seen a lot of very progressive French businesses and conglomerates who really played a crucial role in trying to uplift smallholder lives. So in the context of Mayani, we're open to like-minded partners at different parts of the value chain, from making our production very resilient, from making our distribution better and less wasteful in terms of cold chain logistics, for instance. We're also open to market offtake partners who would provide that consistent market offtake for the produce of our farmers season in, season out. So we're very, very much open to those kinds of partnerships.
There we go. And Richard, final word from you. What would you like to share with the audience? Final word.
I was thinking about the topic of this discussion, which is smart. And sometimes we have it may build the impression that the agriculture that was done before smart agriculture was not smart, which is really far from true. I think the farmers have done an amazing job to cover the needs for food over the past years. However, in Southeast Asia, it's true that there are some locations, some places where it's still possible to improve the productivity, and we can do it. There are ways to do it, but we need to think probably a bit differently. There is a reason why subsidiaries are very important in agriculture, because it is a tough sector. And I believe circularity is a good example. This is really a place where we can build more resilience for the sector. I'm thinking about Singapore, that we have aquaculture feed these days under development that use 70% of local waste, because the food industry is producing a lot of food waste. It's possible to feed the animals with that. So these type of things are probably a bit present in Europe already, but there are some gaps in Southeast Asia.
Okay. Richard, Laurent, JT, let's give them a round of applause. Thank you very much for that.